Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely gripping, real-life corporate emergency that completely turned one company's idea of success and compassion upside down. We're going to break down an incredible event that literally forced a billion-dollar enterprise to take a hard look in the mirror and fundamentally rewire its entire culture. As you'll see, the story of Ashcraft Dynamics proves that sometimes the most profound lessons in leadership don't come from fancy executive retreats or best-selling business books. No, they come from the absolute unlikeliest of heroes during the most terrifying of circumstances. Let's get right into it. I want you to imagine hearing this terrified whisper, "Leave me. I can't walk." Picture a woman in an elegant black dress who has just collapsed onto a freezing cold marble staircase. The sound of shattering glass is echoing through this massive corporate headquarters. Fire alarms are absolutely screaming, and thick, dark smoke is drifting through the bright atrium. She looks up at a total stranger, clutching her severely injured leg, and silently begs him to just save himself. Panic is spreading through the building faster than the fire itself, and a massive wave of frightened people is pushing right past her, totally convinced that every single second is the difference between life and death. Okay, so let's pause and really think about this for a second. If you were in that stairwell, what would you actually do? You know, it's so easy to tell ourselves we'd play the hero, but in a moment of pure, unfiltered chaos, human survival instinct is incredibly powerful. Would you just keep running toward the exit with the rest of the crowd to save your own life? Or would you stop? Would you stop for someone who could offer you absolutely nothing in return? That exact moral dilemma is the beating heart of today's story. Section 1. The Crisis at Headquarters, the Explosion at Falcon Heights. To really grasp the weight of the choice made on those stairs, we need to understand exactly who was caught in the middle of this crisis. It started as a totally normal morning at the prestigious Falcon Heights Corporate Center. Then, a sudden mechanical explosion violently rocked the building, sending terrified employees sprinting for the doors. And right in the dead center of it all were two incredibly different people. First, we have Vivian Ashcraft. She's the celebrated CEO of Ashcraft Dynamics, a demanding billionaire who is widely feared and pretty much impossible to impress. But secretly, behind all the bold headlines, she's a deeply lonely woman. Then, on the flip side, there's Elias Mercer. He's a 38-year-old overnight maintenance tech for a third-party cleaning contractor. He's a widowed single dad, scraping by financially to provide for his 8-year-old son, Rowan. He carries invisible burdens every single day, but he never lets bitterness take over. He is just deeply, fundamentally kind. That brings us to Section 2, a choice in the smoke. One man's refusal to run. So, as thousands of people are fleeing the building, Vivian severely twists her ankle while trying to help one of her assistants. The fall completely wrecks her leg, leaving her totally helpless. Hundreds of her very own employees are rushing right past her in a total panic. But Elias, who had been fixing electrical panels up on the higher floors, spots her. Let's look at how this intense timeline unfolded. Boom, 0 minutes, the explosion happens. Fast forward just 5 minutes into the smoke and panic, and Elias finds Vivian on the stairs. She's actively urging him to leave, fully believing she'll just slow him down and get them both killed. But Elias, he doesn't run. Instead, he calmly takes off his heavy work jacket, slides it under her to shield her from the cold floor, lifts her onto his back, and starts this grueling descent. By minute 15, they are fighting their way through crammed emergency stairwells. The emergency lights are flickering, and Elias's knees are literally trembling from exhaustion as he struggles to breathe the smoky air. Finally, at the 30-minute mark, he stumbles out the main entrance, carrying her safely to the paramedics waiting in the fresh air, right before collapsing onto the pavement himself. Now, here is the most crucial takeaway from that chaotic morning, perfectly represented by this single number, 0. Elias asked for 0 reward. He wanted 0 recognition. When he picked Vivian up, he didn't even stop to ask who she was or what she could do for him. The local news crews actually assumed he was part of her elite executive protection team, and they were completely floored to find out he was just a maintenance worker. And you know what Elias did? He quietly went home. The very next evening, he clocked right back into his overnight cleaning shift like absolutely nothing had happened. To him, helping another human being simply didn't require a reward. Moving right along to Section 3, the unexpected reward, a boardroom surprise. So Vivian spends several days in the hospital recovering from torn ligaments. Meanwhile, the internal shockwaves at Ashcraft Dynamics are just starting to rumble. Exactly 1 week later, Elias gets unexpectedly called into his supervisor's office and is told to get into a luxury black sedan bound for corporate headquarters. Get this, he was absolutely terrified. He genuinely expected to be fired. He was convinced that the wealthy executives were somehow going to pin the accident on him, the invisible contractor. But when he walks through those heavy boardroom doors, every single director stands up and starts applauding him. Vivian, who is now walking with a cane, walks right up to him. She tells him she's been watching the hidden security footage of that stairwell on a loop. She saw her own employees, people who knew exactly who she was, run right past her to save themselves. And it hit her with this hard, profound truth. Success can hide selfishness. She realized that in building her massive billion-dollar empire, she had accidentally fostered an environment of pure fear and self-preservation. And that realization triggered a profound internal shift for Vivian. First, she meticulously reviewed that emergency footage. Second, she bravely confronted the painful reality of her own selfishness and the fear-based culture she'd created, where survival of the fittest trumped actually helping your colleagues. And third, she decided right then and there to completely redefine corporate leadership at her company as compassion. Watching Elias put his life on the line for a total stranger forced her to admit she had completely forgotten what true leadership even looked like. To actually cement this shift, she didn't just send out a company-wide email. She announced the creation of the Elias Foundation. And this was not some flimsy PR stunt. It was specifically dedicated to supporting struggling single parents and aiding low-income workers. She intentionally named it after Elias, not because he wanted his name on a building, but to send a crystal-clear message to her entire workforce. Your character matters so much more than your corporate title. It was a massive cultural reset. But the surprises in that boardroom weren't over yet. Vivian hands Elias an envelope. Now, he's probably thinking it's a bonus check or some charity money, right? Nope. It was a formal offer for a full-time executive position overseeing community outreach and employee welfare programs. Vivian insisted that while they could teach anyone technical boardroom skills, they absolutely could not teach his level of integrity. She knew she needed a leader who actually understood real-world struggle to help build a workplace based on compassion, not fear. Which brings us to Section 4, Transforming the Workplace, Changing the Corporate Culture. Naturally, Elias hesitated at first. I mean, he'd spent his entire life thinking guys with dusty work boots just didn't belong in shiny executive meetings. And let's be honest, a few board members quietly doubted him too. But Vivian reminded him that true leaders are defined by their hearts, not a fancy resume. So, after a long talk with his son Rowan, Elias took the job, and he completely shook things up. Instead of hiding in his plush new office, he bypassed the corporate bubble entirely. He personally showed up to late-night shifts. He learned the actual names of everyday employees. He sat down and listened to the janitors, the security guards, the cafeteria workers. And most crucially, he started solving the practical everyday problems that the traditional executives had ignored for years, simply because they weren't paying attention to the people on the ground. And you guys, his grassroots approach worked wonders. Just look at the turnaround. Before Elias, workplace morale was low and entirely fear-based. After, it was transformed and compassionate. Employee turnover used to be sky high, but it dropped dramatically once he took over. And maybe the most surprising part to the old school executives, productivity went from completely stagnant to naturally improving. Why? It's simple, really. People finally felt valued. Ashcraft Dynamics even went on to receive national recognition as one of the country's most compassionate employers. And all that change came from a man who used to clean their floors. Section 5. The True Measure of Leadership. A Saturday morning at the playground. Fast forward a few months. We're far away from the glass walls of headquarters, on a quiet Saturday morning at a community playground that was entirely funded by the new Elias Foundation. No cameras, no press releases, just families. Vivian is standing there quietly, watching Elias's son Rowan, laughing and playing alongside the kids of other struggling parents who are finally getting a rare moment of peace. It's in this moment she fully realizes that true success is measured by lives changed through simple acts of courage. It's not about the size of your corner office, your profit margins, or your company's stock price. It's about the everyday heroes, the people carrying their own invisible heavy burdens who still somehow find the strength to reach down and lift somebody else up. Our world spends so much time celebrating power and money and absolute ruthlessness. But if you look closely, history is actually quietly shaped by ordinary people who choose compassion when everyone else is choosing convenience. Elias never, ever expected recognition. He just refused to abandon someone who needed him. And that leaves us with one pretty unforgettable question to ponder about our own lives. Can one act of compassion truly change a life? The story of Ashcraft Dynamics proves that even in the absolute darkest of moments, one brave heart really can light the path for everyone else. So think about it. How might you light that path for someone else today? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.